shit, I better log off. I say I'm doing fine, but you're still on my mind. I gotta figure out my next.
That was Dia Morgan's new single that she just put out called Under Over. She has it on YouTube. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe to her YouTube channel. I'm going to put it down in the link so you know right where to go. So you could just hit that notification button on hers and you can go ahead and subscribe and like all her videos as you do to mine. Because who supports what is where it goes. You feel what I'm saying? You see what I'm laying down, you see it and you feel it, so you know it's really there. Again, that's Dia Morgan. I'll have a little more of the little special at the end of this podcast, but you already know what it is. You already know what to do. So know who it is. It's a Lilsnoopy on the track 1, 2. I gotta talk. I gotta say what's on my mind. Listen, I got some special guests for everything. This is no B-lines. We have no borderlines around this room. We have no censorship. We have no structure, nothing. We just lay it down, give you how a TI is, and you figure it out for yourself. That's how it is. That's how it's going to be until I get better at it, but it's not going to get no better. So, without further ado, we got two people. We got Erica on one side and we got Joe on the other side. I have them on Zoom. You can't see them, but I got them on Zoom because I want to see their pretty faces. We're going to go ahead and go one-on-one. They're going to do a quick introduction and then we're going to jump into the show. So, Joe, tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you feel you're a great fit for this topic today.
My name's Joe Gerber. I've known Bosco since I was Joey Gerber, blonde and blue eyes, which feels like an eternity ago. 24, almost 25. I am a real estate agent based in Chicago. My background was I originally wanted to be a special ed teacher or a social worker, and somehow I ended up in real estate. So not quite sure how that happened, but I use all the same skills and work with still very interesting personalities in need of guidance and love. I came out when I was 14 and a half, freshman year of high school, halfway through actually on Christmas Day, which I'm Jewish, which has no significance as to why I came out then. And I do a lot of advocacy work. I worked with a nonprofit on and off for many years. Here in Chicago, I teach religious school at a synagogue, and I do on and off, campaign work. I ran for the school board in Highland Park in Deerfield, trying to be a voice for folks who either can't speak up or don't want to, but definitely think that the dialogue we're going to talk about today is just right up my alley.
Erica, you're on.
All right, so I'm Erica. I've known Bosco about 5 years now, 5 maybe 6. We worked together at Dick's Sporting Goods when he came over there. I came out when I was 13 to my parents and about 5 friends. Then pretty much if anyone asked me after that, I would tell them. It wasn't like a big coming out thing like that. It was just if you asked me, I'd let you know. I'm 28. I'm currently in paramedic school, working to continue that. I have my EMT license, so I will be starting to work with that during these COVID times. So it's a lot of helping people who need help but don't know where to get it from. And yeah.
All right, you know their backstory, you know their history, so we're going to go ahead and explain what the topic of today is. Topic of today is queerness. Now, I could go ahead and do a long spiel and they could do a long spiel about gender identity, what you define as. But when I was in Switzerland with one of my other queer friends, I was talking to her. And when I said, when did you know you were lesbian? She was like, well, I knew when I was 10 years old, but I never liked the word lesbian. And I was like, well, why? And she was like, well, it's kind of like I got to add another definition to the word, because I could tell somebody, yeah, I'm lesbian, or yeah, I'm gay, or yeah, I'm bi-curious. But then it's like I got to explain what that is, because being gay or being bi-curious, being lesbian isn't just, oh, I like women. Oh, I just like guys. Oh, I'm questioning either or. It's like I got to go into a further detail of like, okay, specifically this, that, and the third. So queer is the word I like to use because it just a baseline. Queer is just different. That's how she explained it to me. It was like, it just means different. I'm not on the, what do you call it? Pro quo? Whatever the shit is. Yeah. No, I'm not on that. Just know it's something different. And I was like, you know what? That does sum it up a little bit better, because I'm not going to question you if you just say, oh, you're queer. And I'm like, oh, okay. Leave it for their interpretation, because I don't have like 30 minutes to explain to you what I may or may not be. So that's why I just use queer in general. I mean, queer doesn't necessarily may be like totally different, but it doesn't mean like you're on the same path as the norm of what America wants you to be. So it can be used in a lot of different ways, which is why I appreciate that word more than me putting a label on you like, bam, that's what you are, that's what you're gonna stay, and that's how I know you. So do we have any objections in the crowd so far?
No?
No,
All right, see, 3 for 3.
I think that's a good way to say it.
I think queer is an umbrella term. I think, like, as someone who's on the autism spectrum, we always say in the special ed world, when you meet one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And I think as society evolves in the discussion of certain identities, whether they be personal identities or, you know, research into disabilities or disorders or really any part of the human experience, I think that our conversation evolves as the research opens more doors. And so I think that using the term queer is just a nice way to say, you know, it's an umbrella term of different identities, but it also, as a queer person, feels less boxed into who I am and who I love. And I think that it's kind of reciprocal, right? It's society saying that you can identify specifically however you want, but this is the umbrella term of the community. And I think as members of the community, I think it's also, it makes us feel a little more free to evolve as people as we get older.
Indeed, I can't say it better myself, you see? This is why I always ask for help, ask for other views on life, because they have a better perspective of the world than I probably ever will. So the way this is going to go is literally just an on topic. We have different points in front of us that we're just going to go back and forth. You know, they're going to give mostly their views, because this is their world, their topic, their ideas, their views. Nobody's judging, obviously. And if you are judging, fuck you and where you came from. So, not really makes sense. Don't know why you listened to this. You knew what it was from the jump. So, the first thing I want to start this point with is, I know you explained it in your introduction, but when did you know that you were different? That you knew that you weren't on the same status as everybody else? Not necessarily just being queer, but knowing that your personality was something different than what your friends may have been or what your family may have been used to. Either one. It don't matter who starts it off.
Do you want me to start?
If you want to, go ahead. I'm trying to think. If you're ready, go for it.
I am as ready as a bird. So it's funny, I came out when I was a freshman in high school, but that's definitely not when I knew. And I think that that's also part of the conversation is knowing and saying, right? Knowing and being is kind of two different answers. I would say that I knew that I was different, like in between 4th and 5th grade. I don't think I had language for it until 6th grade. You know, I come from a family of very open-minded folks. I have 2 siblings. One is also gay. The other is pansexual and non-binary. And so, for me, now that I've come out and I've lived authentically, I don't think there ever would have been a question in my family of the open-mindedness of us. But I definitely think that, you know, regardless of how accepting a certain family is, I think that it's still an individual journey that someone goes through to actually get to the point to say, hi, I'm whatever I am. The moment I realized that I think the moment it clicked where I had language and I knew was in 6th grade. I was at a residential treatment center in Montana for mental health, and I was 12. I turned 12 there, so I was 11 and just barely 12, and I lived in a house with 14 other boys, and I happened to be the youngest in age. The way it was structured is there were different lodges, and all of us were grouped by general age bracket and also gender. None of the girls who were biologically female lived with the boys who were biologically male. And so I lived with 14 other boys that, in terms of age, were actually older than me. But because I was generally a little more mature, at least in how my behaviors were and inside my brain in many ways, they put me with kids that were older than me. And the moment I walked in, they started harassing me because they could tell that I wasn't like all of them. And I think that was the moment where I realized that it wasn't just that I was not like all the other boys, it was that I didn't present my gender in a masculine way, and I definitely was not of that grain. So I think that was the first moment where I sort of knew about exactly what I was, and it clicked. But I don't think I was comfortable coming out until high school because of all of the bullying and harassment that I experienced there, but also when I came home. And so I think there's a step where where you come to terms with it in your own soul, but I think there's a next step of actually coming out to the world, whether you come out in pieces or not. I mean, I came out to my family over winter break, and I came out to a few friends at school right after, and obviously in high school things spread like wildfires, but I didn't actually come out to more than 10 people right away. They just all kind of found out eventually. But that's kind of when I realized I was, and came out in a kind of a comical way, because that's how I deal with things.
All right, Erica.
I think I knew when I was probably in about 6th or 7th grade, I knew I was different. Basically, like, when we'd hang out with our friends, it was always, like, I was more so, like, one of the guys is typically how I presented myself, and that's what I was seen as, but I didn't, like, I'm not a big fan of labels, so that's why I didn't really have, like, the right verbiage to say it. So when I did eventually come out to a few of my friends, that was end of 8th grade, beginning of freshman year, and then it's like, that really didn't spread weirdly for, don't know how, it got to, like, our group of friends, but not the entire school, so that was interesting. But also, because I wasn't trying to necessarily hide it, but my sister was still in high school with me at the same time, and I didn't necessarily want her friends to know, because I know they're very critical and everything like that. So it was more so, like, I knew who I was, but it's not like I was projecting it out to everyone until probably college, when I went away to a school where only I knew one other person from high school, and that was it. But she had known since, because we went to camp together, her and I had known each other for 10 years, so she had known. But you know, it's you come on in different parts, so it's like knowing when you're different and saying you're different. Those are two very different things, because it's like I knew at a young age, but like Joey said, I didn't have the right verbiage to kind of connect it to what I was and things like that. So until later in life.
So you felt like not until college you could project who you really were because it was a new environment and you didn't have to worry about people really like judging you right off bat. So you wanted to kind of jump the gun. It's like, if you're going to judge me, at least know my truth.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I mean, and that's the other thing. It's like, if people asked me about it, yeah, I was going to be honest about it, but it's not like I was broadcasting it to the world in high school and things like that, because, you know, high school, both of you went to the same school, so, you know, it's very, people are judgmental and things like that. So, especially my grade, there were, I think, 3 out queer people in the whole grade at the time, so it wasn't like a big thing. Yeah, you were one, yep. And then, so, but it's also like because I was a 3-season athlete, so when you're on those teams, it's not everyone's necessarily comfortable with being, or it's that stereotype where it's like, oh, she's gonna hit on me in the locker room, I don't feel comfortable, things like that. So it's like, yes, I kept that part quiet from my teammates, like several of them knew, but because they were my friends and they were part of the group that I told. But overall, yeah, I pretty much kept it quiet until I was out of that environment.
All right, everybody has their story and everybody has their comfort levels. And Joe, when was your comfort level? Because if I remember correct, since you were the youngest, was it your middle or older brother who came out as gay?
So it's interesting. I have two older siblings. Ben is 28 now, and Lucas is 29, going to be 30 in February, which already makes me nuts. But let's not talk about that side of it. So it's funny. Ben came out, Ben and I are exactly 4 years apart. So when I was a freshman in high school, he was a freshman in college. And he had come out his freshman year of high school too. But interestingly enough, I'm sure I could have asked and been told, but like, it never came up around me when I was in, 5th and 6th grade when he first came out. And I wouldn't say my mom actively encouraged them not to tell me. I think it just wasn't brought up in front of me, and sort of for two reasons. One, because I was already dealing with all this other stuff that I think my mom always knew that to some degree I struggled with my sexuality too, or my gender identity.
Because we have our own sort of personal journey to get to the point where we can be out. I always say that Ben being out made it easier for me to be out, but I had to get to the point where I was comfortable enough to come out. Because I think, just like all people, my individual experience is different than both of my siblings, and I already had enough things I was dealing with at the time that I think I had to get through some of the other shtick, as my grandma would say, before I could kind of come to terms with my sexuality. And I think once I did, it was easier because I had someone who sort of paved the way. But I had to get to the point in my own soul to be comfortable enough to come out.
You did it your own way. You did it your own pace. And that's for everything. You do it your own way, your own pace, because somebody can tell you got to get it done right now, but it may not be time for you to do it right now. Because I'm not comfortable with it yet. I'm not confident with what I am yet. Miss Erica.
Yes.
I have a question.
Go for it.
My question for you is, who was the first crush you had?
Who was the first crush I had? Like, normal person-wise or celebrity-wise?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. Whoever your first crush was.
I think it was probably Emma Stone, not gonna lie. Or, I don't know, I had a lot when I was younger, but I think when I was younger, it was not necessarily like, I always thought they were like very pretty people, not necessarily based on their gender that the person was that I had a crush on, but like what they looked like. And yes, I'm aware that makes me sound vain, but when you're younger, that's what you base it off of, especially celebrity-wise. You don't like know them; you just know the role that they play and what they show to the media and things like that. So I think that pretty much was when it started. Was that I found other girls like around my age to be attractive, and that's how that worked its way out.
And who was your first like in-person crush?
Yeah, it was someone I went to overnight camp with. We were the same age.
Oh, it's got to be overnight camp, huh?
Pretty. I mean, that's how, like most things. That's how it happens, So, yeah.
Did you kiss her?
No, I didn't kiss them. We were like 12.
So? For sure. I was kissing in kindergarten. You couldn't tell me nothing. Sure. If you ain't the bank teller, don't tell me nothing. I was 12. I'm like, sure. That's almost right at puberty right there. That's right when it starts. I'm like, you can just hold on to it. When you gonna be like Chris Brown? I should have kissed you. I should have shown you. And it's okay.
Yep.
How about you,
Yeah,
Joe?
that was my life for a long time.
Come on, man. How about you, Mr. Gerber?
So mine's a little more interesting. In terms of, it was not, I didn't process it till later in life. So my dad and stepmom live in Highland Park. And we had a friend who lived, do you remember Piero's Pizza?
Yes.
Remember where it used to be around the corner before it was moved a few years ago?
I believe so.
Okay, well...
Are you talking about the one on Roger Williams?
Yeah, before when it was on Broadview on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we had a friend who lived in one of the apartments of Piero. And because I vaguely remember him being really friends with our family at the height of their friendship after, like, right as I was coming out. And it didn't dawn on me until, like, a few years ago, because actually I went to high school with his niece. And she always remembered that I was friends with her uncle. And I was talking to her, and then I went home, and I thought, he was definitely my first, like, actual crush as, like, a 14-year-old. And it's funny looking back on it, because he's, like, this really nice, funny, like, charismatic guy, and I just always, like, that was probably my first, like, I don't want to say realistic crush, but, like, real-life crush. Because it definitely wasn't realistic that at 14 I was crushing on someone that was probably in his late 30s.
Well, you never know. Sometimes you gotta risk it to get that biscuit, honey. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, baby.
Well, I might have done what I had to do if I was, like, a little older to know what I was feeling. Like, if he had caught me when I was, like, 17, yeah, maybe. But definitely not at 14 or 15.
Well, no, not at 14. That's the ill. No.
At least if I was 17, it would be legal.
At least with a strong consent. So your first time crushing comes with first time dates. What was your first date experience like? Like, we'll do it like this. Let's make it fun. What was the best date you ever had? And what was the worst date you've ever had? Where you were like, you know what? I really shouldn't have spent my time on. You know what? I'll pay for my own meal. Matter of fact, it was so bad, you should pay for me.
All right, I can tell you my worst one.
Yeah, Erica, go for it. Myself. This part is actually being recorded, and I might have to be respectful of one of those two people.
You don't have to say names. You can say whatever you want. I mean, you know, it's only broadcasted to the world. What's the chances of them stumbling onto this podcast?
All right, so I will go with my worst one, so this person, they asked me on a date. The date was to go to drive-in, but it was McDonald's. They claimed they forgot their wallet, made me pay for it, and then thought I would be okay with just, like, going to sit in a parking garage. That was the date.
That sounds something a guy would do to a girl. Okay. All right. Well, I've kind of...
Oh, it was not.
Oh, wow. She pulled a guy move.
Yeah.
Wow, that is... Well, what happened to the parking garage?
Oh, they tried something, but I was very fed up at the fact that they thought that was a date, so nothing.
Like, come on. You could have at least paid for my quarter pounder meal, you cheap ass.
That's right. I mean, and they didn't even pick me up from my house. They made us drive to a mutual, like, middle ground spot, and then they made me leave my car, and then they were like, all right, we're going to go get dinner now. Dinner was, like I said, McDonald's, and I had to pay.
Oh, man, I have never done that to a female. I can say that. To McDonald's? That's like the fifth date. The first. Oh,
That's not even like a date. That's like something you do with, like, your friends.
Or, like, after you're married and you, like, can be ugly and in sweatpants and go through the drive-thru together. That is not a first date.
Lord,
Right, exactly.
However, I say that with the next story, for me. So here's the interesting thing. I definitely think that the actual date itself matters less than the connection you sort of build with someone. And here's my reason. So I had, I would say, 2 very serious relationships in my life. I've dated a bunch of people. I've gone out with people a few times. I've dated a few more. But I would say of all of the relationships, whether one date or more that were significant, I would say that 2 were like real, like life adult relationships. And the first one was I was 20, and he was 24. Yeah, he was 24-ish. And I think like right after we started dating, I actually turned 21, and I was still in college, and he went to college in Nebraska, and moved to Chicago, and then we ended up matching on Tinder. Our date did not start as a date. It started as a, hey, come over. And I said, okay, and I ended up sleeping over. And I think it's so interesting because that's kind of a hoey way to start dating someone, but in retrospect, I wasn't really looking for a relationship. I just, had nothing to do that night. And that turned out to be of the 2 relationships, the most significant and at the time probably the healthiest relationship I've been in. And oddly enough, my second adult relationship, which Erica, that was the relationship I was talking to you about before we got on the recording. That first date was actually not terrible. Like, we went to Buca de Beppo, which, for a college student and his newly graduated, soon-to-be boyfriend is actually kind of fancy. And we, shared family-style dishes, and then we ended up going to the mall and walking around. And, I mean, there were a couple things that probably would have been minor red flags, but, like, all in all, that was a very solid date. And it was probably the most unhealthy relationship that I've ever been in. And I think it also was probably the relationship that, at the end, brought up a lot of trauma that I had to process from the relationship, but also from, like, my entire life. Like, the last 2 years of therapy, my therapist has definitely made his money's worth of how many times I had to pay him to see him. So I think, like, it's quality over quantity, right? Like, I think that some dates, like, the date itself is less important than the person you're going with when it comes to, like, connection, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
But I will say that, like, sometimes trashy dates are just trashy dates, and that is what it is. And sometimes trashy dates turn into decent humans who just are longing for a connection, and sometimes that connection starts a little more intimate.
So so that pickup line must have been strong to get you, huh?
No, he just had really great hair and his own place, honestly.
Yeah, that's important because I know somebody's newly sister-in-law, i.e. me. Her 3 rules now are the guy has to have one of 3 things: a car, because I'm not driving everywhere, his own apartment, or at the very least, a job working to get his own car and or apartment.
I agree with that.
I'm like, that's not even far-fetched. That's not even, she thought it was high maintenance. I'm like, no, that's low. That's like, you should have that. Like, come on now, you're in your 30s. Hell yeah. By that time, your ass better have something.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. It's especially when you're, like, working towards a relationship. If you don't have, like, a means to do things, like, yes, having your own apartment is nice, but, like, it's not like, the end-all. But, yeah, if you don't have, like, a car or a job even, not having a job, that's kind of a deal breaker. Because that just means you're lazy and not trying to better yourself.
Yeah. But, I mean, I also think that, like, Erica, you're older than me, but I think that, like, generally in your 20s, but, closer to my part of 20s, I definitely think that we are all sort of at different points, right? We're at the part of our lives where those of us who have grown up are grown up, and those who have not yet grown up are definitely still like they were when we were kind of in high school or college. And so I think that, and I think if you throw in being queer, I think finding someone is hard. I think, generally speaking, my joke with my straight female friends is, they're straight, cisgender, and female. They've got like half of the whole globe to pick from, and like I've got a small fraction of the globe. And so I think if you couple the time of our lives we're in, but also that, those of us who are out and proud, or just out kind of and open, I think it's few and far between. But generally, I think dating is just hard when you're in your 20s and you're queer. I think that we come from a society that still very much stigmatizes queer spaces and queer intimacy. So we live a more, like, at least habitually, I think, even though I'm very open about who I am and I have no friends in my life that would ever judge someone that I'm dating or the fact that I date men. But I think that we still live in a society that generally does that. So I think it's hard to meet people, and I think because it's hard to, queer people are sort of harder to find, I think it's more often that you kind of meet people under this guise that they must be great people, right? But not all people are great regardless of identity. So it's harder to parse out the bad apples when you only have a few apples to pick from.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, and that's also, like, yes, I'm your brother's age, so 4 years older than you, so definitely, like, people my age is, yes, we're in that older age, but it's still, like, a stigma put on us, like, of being out and open with who you care about, like, not to say my friends would judge me for it, but, like, regular society, they do, and so that's why it's, like you said, harder to find people that are okay with being themselves and being out there when there is so much that, like, makes them uncomfortable, and there's a reason why they're not necessarily out and who they want to be until they're closer to their 30s.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that, like, I'm Jewish, and I think, I'm not very religious at all, but I think that I come from a religion that, idealizes Jews marrying Jews. And so, like, of my two ex-boyfriends, like, the first one grew up in Nebraska, was raised Catholic, like, had a very different viewpoint on what the future with someone looks like. And then my second boyfriend was very similar to me. I mean, he was Jewish, more religious than me, but still Jewish, and I had already so much in common from the moment we even started talking. And I think that, like, as a person who is queer, is Jewish, wants to be in a relationship, I think that I became more infatuated with him than I might have now. And I think I was sort of blinded by that. But it's interesting because I think that, like, all of these layers of kind of what you're looking for and your experiences sort of change your perception. And I think that, like, of my two boyfriends, the one that I think was so different from anything that I'd ever pictured myself with was, of the two, well, let's put it this way, I'm friends with one of them and not the other. And that's not by choice, right? Like,
Right.
One of them stayed a really good friend, and the other, who I have nothing bad to say about. I have a really deep, profound appreciation for who he was to me and what he did for me, but I also acknowledge some of the trauma that I experienced with what he didn't do for me and some of the negative things that happened. And so I think that unlikely souls become kindred spirits. And, my ex-boyfriend from many years ago, I've helped him and his boyfriend find their place, their apartment. I'm going to help him buy a house. I'm really good friends with him. I still talk to his mother. And I just think it's just the content and the quality of someone's character and how you connect with them. And I think that when you connect with someone at a deeper level, their presence in your life is valuable regardless of what the role is.
Indeed, true. And I feel to some extent that some certain heterosexual people, which is, very judgmental at sometimes, feel like it's a whole yes, it's a whole different world when you join Queer Nation, but at the same time there's so many similarities that they overlook, that they feel like, oh, they want special treatment with this and that, but we don't get that kind of treatment, or we're so used to that treatment in itself that we're kind of blinded by what they may be asking, which can be basic needs of what a simple person or a straight couple may want. And do you ever feel like that falls onto you, where it's like people feel like you deserve special kind of treatment because of your sexuality choice?
I mean, I don't feel like I deserve any special treatment. I mean, like, that's the thing that people don't seem to understand, is that we're just people, just like everyone else, trying to, live our lives with the person who we care about, and it's the same as them. It's the thing that is upsetting and frustrating, is that people think that we're, like, seeking special treatment because we're this, that, like a certain way and things like that. And that was, like, one of the issues with one of my exes, is that she was still in college and I had just graduated, but when I'd go back and visit, like, we would always hold hands regardless, but then we went to visit her hometown with her parents, and that was fine. But when we'd go out to, like, certain places, it was, like, no contact because of how the society is towards everything, and it's a small town and everyone knows everyone's business. So it's just like little things like that heterosexual couples take for granted, that, like, they can do those normal things without feeling shamed or anything like that. But for other couples like that, you have to watch out for that and, like, be cautious and careful of your actions. And that hurts sometimes for things like that. Like, you just want to be able to, like, do normal things, like hold someone's hand, which is, like, such a fundamental, like, basic human need, is just human contact, and you can't even do that. So that's, like, a lot of times people take advantage of that, and then if you do something, then you're, like, called out on it. So it's a hard line to cross. But no, I don't think we deserve any special treatment because of it. It's just like being treated like everyone else. That's basically it.
Yeah, I actually, this is the one question I gave a lot of thought to today. I think that here's like the reality, right? Like, I'm not calling all white people racist because I'm a white person, and I'm not saying that all people are prejudiced or discriminatory, but the fact of the matter is you have to acknowledge the history of folks, right? And so you have to remember who has and is and always will be, at least right now, in power, right? White, straight men who are Christian. And so as we talk about right for people of color, I also think that part of that dialogue is every other minority community, whether they pass on the surface as, like those folks, right? You have to think about, like, affirmative action, right? So colleges having to admit folks of color or folks who are of diverse statuses, like gender and things like that. That is a forced inclusion, right? And to me, that doesn't really work. I mean, it creates policy that opens opportunity, but it doesn't change the conscience of a nation, right? And so you can say, I love everyone, right? But do you actually, right? No, probably not. And so if we're talking about, like, in terms of policy, I would say that there is no need for special treatment because it's all about equal treatment, right? But I think on the flip side, you have to remember the perspectives that are ingrained in our country in particular, of that anyone who isn't white, straight, and a Christian and male generally, historically, was looked down upon, right? And so it's not that as queer people we're asking for things that are more favorable than those of our heterosexual and cisgender counterparts. It's that we are already stacked against everybody else, right? So it's just a fight to get to the same level. And so it's not about changing policy as much to me as it is changing the dialogue, right? And it isn't that we want special treatment, but if you're coming from communities or ideologies that are rooted in I'm better than you, or you are a little bit lower than me, right? Well, then you're always going to feel like I want special treatment because I'm gay. But if you look at like the actual basis of what we're asking for, right? Marriage equality is not special treatment, right? There were people who believe, and whether I believe that or not, it's their own right to believe that as a religious person, marriage is between a man and a woman. I disagree, but regardless of their religious beliefs, right, our Constitution separates religion and government. So regardless of someone's personal religious beliefs, that should not be the basis for allowing or prohibiting marriages with couples that are same gender or same sex. And so for me, it isn't about special treatment, it's about getting to the point where me and my straight cousin have the same rights, no matter where we live in America. But to get there, we have to acknowledge the perception ingrained in this country of I'm just a little bit lower on the totem pole than my white straight neighbor just because I'm gay. And I think once you change the dialogue and you challenge the dialogue and the perception, I think that's when it's not taboo to ask for the same rights as someone else. But I think when you're coming from a place where they feel like they're a little bit higher than me, even if they don't believe it, it's subconscious, whatever it might be, I'm always going to be asking for special treatment if they automatically think that they're better than me in some ways or others, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And with that, some people always seem to think that it's a difference between being heterosexual and queer, when in my experiences with the friends I've made, they have the same problems. They go through similar changes in their life that I may go through. Their dating life is really the same, except the orientation of somebody that may be in front of me. And they may go through the same troubles and the same good times, ups and downs. It doesn't really matter. But they try to put it as they need the special treatment because they're so different from us, when in reality, they're not really that much different from what we go through. You're just making it seem out that they're so different that you just accepting them is the hardest thing to do in your life, when in reality it's not even affecting your life whatsoever. Even if you're the father and your son comes to you as gay, you really doesn't affect you as much in a way, depending on how you grew up, where you grew up, the people you surround yourself with, what you're used to. And that goes with anything. Even if I was a straight man and I bring home a woman that my mom doesn't like, which I have, she just doesn't she's not vocal at the time that I may make that bad decision. She may feel uncomfortable and doesn't want her son or her baby to be in that situation, but sometimes you just gotta let life play itself out and have them learn for themselves. And you can learn something too, that, oh, maybe I was wrong, maybe they're not so different, or hey, they're better for each other than I would have thought. Y'all see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I also think I'm trying to find it. I can't really find it right now, but I think the best illustration of this idea of is certain things that the queer community is fighting for or have fought for, an argument for special treatment. Can't find it. I'll try and find it before we finish. But to me, the best example is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She wrote the majority opinion for the Supreme Court case of Obergefell versus Hodges, which effectively ruled that states can't ban same-sex marriage. Straight person doesn't want a gay person to get married, then they don't have to get married, right? It's like, the funniest thing is, like, me being gay, this is something I used to share in high school, me being gay is like you wanting a donut but being on a diet. Just don't eat a donut. Like, that's the simple solution. I can eat a donut because I want to, but if you don't because you're on a diet, just don't eat a goddamn donut.
Yeah, that's kind of... Everything that's hitting right on the nose because people just need to start accepting this is the world we're about to live in, and it's kind of held back from the people who aren't used to it and won't accept it, that are floating around putting these restrictions on certain things. And I feel like as we get older, obviously, as life moves on, we're the ones that are going to start taking over empowering government, because obviously it's going to be our generation because we're the next generation, because we're the future. We're not back in those days in the 18th century.
I also think that, like, the same mentality that my argument is, in the sense that, like, I'm not asking for you to be, in the conversation. I'm not asking for you to be participating, but I shouldn't have to ask to just be able to have that conversation. And so, like, for me, like, I'm all about someone's right to own a gun if they feel the need to, right? If they feel that they, for whatever reason, have to own a gun, whether it be, a regular gun or an automatic or semi-automatic, like, fine. Like, you do you, right? As long as you do it legally and you're not coming to kill me, that's fine. But, like, I don't feel like I'm ever going to want to own a gun, right? I don't want to own a gun. I have no interest. I don't feel the need. That might change one day, but I would never go to my neighbor and say, you can't own a gun. Because if they want to, they can. But I'm never going to, right? It's the same thing with queer rights, right? Like, you're not queer, right? Like, you, my straight neighbor who's man, like, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm asking for just the ability to get married to someone if I choose to. And you don't have to be a part of that, but, like, you should still not be a part of the conversation to let it not be an option, right? Does that make sense?
Indeed, if it's not your group, it's not your place. Simple as that, because you don't know. I can't talk to a white person about black people problems. I mean, I can, but if I want them to be able to relate to maybe some issues I've ran into or some problems I may have ran into, they're not going to be able to relate fully because they've spent their whole life being white. So how would that even help?
I'm definitely not one to be able to say to you your experience, right? And I definitely don't have a place to table, right? But I won't ever say that you can't have a table to talk at,
Exactly. Erica, you've been too damn quiet. You must be a hell of a listener.
No, you guys are hitting the right points and saying the right things, so that's why.
Well, I'm glad we are, because this has been rolling around for 28 minutes and 6 seconds just on those two topics. And I still got to put it all together. See how fast time flies when you're having fun? It's beautiful around here. They comfortable, they relaxed. I mean, let me ask y'all a question. Does this feel like an interview, or you are talking about like serious things, but you're relaxed about it? You feel like this is an open space, nobody's judging you. You feel like you could actually be you on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an open and safe space where, like, I'm not holding back answers for anything or, like, tapering my responses for things because I feel uncomfortable or anything like that. So, yeah, I'd say it's an open place.
Yeah, I definitely think that, like, an open dialogue is important. And that's what I think this is.
And I love every bit about No Beelines. That's why I call it No Beelines. It's an open place. Anybody can cross over. This ain't Trump's wall that he failed to build. This thing is knocked down. If you could go back 10 years, so me and Joe would be 14. Erica, you'd be 16, so 18. 18. Yeah, she'd be 18. You have 5 minutes with yourself, and you sit right there at the table. Y'all, me and Joe are just hitting puberty. We're just at the spike. Erica, you about to go to college. What would you tell yourself? 5 minutes. You only got 5 minutes. What would you talk to yourself about?
Erica, I want to go first.
Sure. I would tell myself that life isn't easy, and just as I overcame an immense amount of inner battles and inner demons when I was 14 and 12, I will continue to fight them for the rest of my life. And I would just remind myself that every day makes me stronger for the next day, and that it's important to be resilient and find people to seek help from, and to know that, I guess, that it gets better. You know, like the last 2 years of my life since my relationship ended and I've had to sort of rebuild myself, the thing that I've always said is the sun always rises and you deserve to be here to see your sunrise. And so, like, this idea that it always gets better, and we go through things that are harder than the next and the last, but the fact that we get up every morning and that we are at the table with ourselves and our lives and things we're going through, whether they're, you know, demons or issues, that's how we prevail, is by just getting up and dealing with it. And when we struggle to having people in our lives that kind of give us that strength to move on, to keep going.
Well, you have 2 more minutes to yourself, so you can say something else if you want.
I would also tell myself that nobody can tell me who to be, and I have the power to be exactly who I want to be. And I think the last thing I would tell myself is there's no such thing as a knight in shining armor, and all of the movies I used to watch aren't realistic, right? You have to be your own knight in shining armor, and you have to build yourself to a point where when someone comes along to share their lives with you and you share yours with them, that it's mutual. But until you have a love for yourself and an appreciation for yourself, you are not capable of loving anyone else.
Ain't that the truth? Like, how you gonna love others if you don't love yourself? You can't dig yourself in a bigger hole just by trying to please others, make them happy, make sure they all right, make sure they're good, make sure they're not in a funk, and you're in a funk yourself because you won't ask for help. I try to tell people, don't be scared to ask for help. That's the hardest thing to do. I don't care what it is. I know men like to be macho, like this is the 50s. Fuck that. This ain't the 50s no more. This is 2020. You can ask for help. You're going to be called soft. You're going to be called a sissy, whatever. I don't care. I'll be a sissy getting help with my depression, anxiety, whatever I may have. I'm getting help for. And that's the first step in finding yourself. Erica, 5 minutes. What would you be saying to your 18-year-old self?
All right, to my 18-year-old self, I would say that you're starting a new adventure. You're going to meet people who are completely different from you and some that are like you, so don't be afraid to be who you truly are. It's not a time to continue to kind of hide yourself, but just go be confident in who you are and what you have to give to the world, and then people will gravitate towards you for that. And also, I tell myself to not only be more open with myself, but be more open with the people around me, and not be so hard on myself overall, the people around me. And then one of my favorite quotes that I live by is, I tell myself that one small crack does not mean that you're broken. It means that you were put to the test and you didn't fall apart. So with that, just basically keep pushing forward. Things are going to get hard, but you keep moving past them. So I tell myself, like Joey said, it gets better, it gets easier and better, but just to be your true natural self and don't be ashamed of who you are for it.
And that's the hardest thing, is to find out who you truly are and what makes you. A quote I wrote one time, I don't know if I sent it to y'all. I kind of just write as how I'm feeling because I have a lot of random thoughts, as you guys may have known over the years. It's simple yet powerful. Tell me what y'all think of this. The only guaranteed love we have in life is ourselves. And even then, we can hate.
Definitely. I think that a lot of the hate that we exude or we put out into the world, I don't think all of it, but I think a lot of it comes from within. And I definitely think that, like, after my ex and I broke up, I definitely thought that I definitely had a lot of anger and resentment towards him. But as I was kind of processing all of that, I think I discovered that I don't hate him at all, and I don't think I ever did, right? I internalized a lot of I internalized the breakup as it was my fault, right? Or I did something. And my whole life, that's what I've always felt. When something doesn't go right, I always blame myself. Or I don't blame myself, but I think maybe I could have done something differently. And I've always placed at least a portion of the blame on myself. And I think that was why, for a while after it, I was just so mad. And I think once I started discovering all of the unprocessed trauma from that relationship and also my whole life, I think I discovered that I don't hate him at all, right? Because once I kind of fell in love with myself and found myself, I think I discovered that I was able to let all of those feelings, whether associated with him or not, go. And he became just a big part of my story that's just no longer a part of it. But there's so many other people that were parts of my story that aren't a part of it anymore. He's no different than any of the other people that have helped me along the way. He's just not next to me anymore, and that's okay. But I definitely think that a lot of that stems from my own self-hatred or self-consciousness, too.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that and saying that really you only have, I mean, and it's sad, but it's like if you're looking out for yourself, and that's the most important part of it, is that things are going to hurt, but you get up the next day and you keep pushing forward. Like one of my breakups, we still talk, but it's definitely not the same. And other ones, it's cut ties completely. So it's definitely like you pick and choose your battles. And like Joey, I internalized a lot of them and, overthought things of like, oh, I could have done this. If I did this, then maybe things would be different. From that alone, there was a lot of like loathing, like self-loathing and hatred that came with that. But then it's like, you have to remember that it ended not only on your part, but there was another person in the relationship that was not necessarily a healthy partner.
And that's the hardest thing, to come to the realization that not only you notice your own mistakes, but you notice that all in all, the relationship wouldn't have survived, that you came to a content in your relationship. And I tell people you can't be content in a relationship because that means you're okay with certain things happening. And you can't be okay with certain things happening. I don't care what it is. Certain things just can't slide by. I know I had my fair share with my ex of 4 years, which is a long time to be with somebody. A lot of people don't think 4 years is a lot. I'm like, that's 4 birthdays, 4 Christmases. Well, technically, yeah, she celebrated Christmas, but she was Jewish, so that's 4 Hanukkahs, So it's a lot. Like, it was a process. And a lot of people saw me through that process, and it was not the joyous of rides, but you gotta find that self-love again because you were content with that person being around. You're used to them texting you, calling you, whatever, hanging out with them. And then when it cuts off like that, you're kind of at a loss. Like, what am I supposed to do without this person? Well, you're supposed to do what you were doing before you got with that person. You were the same. 4 years ago, I was in high school, but like, you got to find who you are as an adult. Now you got to restart. Know who you are. And that's why I kind of did my own self-cleansing to really have my head straight. I put myself on a restriction, no sex for 3 months. It was hard the first 2 weeks, and then it kind of just thrown off on me. I didn't care after that. But it really gives you time to think about who you are, what you really want, what you're looking for, what your goals are in life, and what you're trying to achieve if a person does come in your life. And it really just helps you balance between. It gets you prepared for what you want to do. Like me and Erica are first responders, so we could work whenever, however, doing whatever at the hours of the night. So our significant other has to understand, hey, we're not going to be here 24 hours the whole day. We're not going to work 8-hour shifts. We don't know what an 8-hour shift is. Hell, I ain't working 12-hour shifts neither sometimes. I have to, as a fireman, I may work a 24 or 48-hour shift. And you have to be okay with that. Erica may work a 12-hour, 16, 24-hour shift. And you have to be okay with that. Mentally and physically. And mentally is the hardest thing that I think hurts relationships the most. And see how it's similar between straight couples and queer couples? Mentally, if you're not strong and ready for what your partner is doing, job wise, relationship wise, or when they tell you that they're not ready to be in a certain part of their life, you have to come to an understanding regardless whether you agree with it or not. You got to be able to sit down and talk it out so we can find common ground. Even if we disagree, there is common ground to be found of what we should do next.
Yeah, agree. And like especially with that making time for each other and things like that. In my last relationship, I sat down with them and told them, hey, I'm working 3 different jobs and in school right now, so if I can't hang out with you this time, you can't get pissed off at me, but I will make time and like plan it out on certain days. And then it would get to the point where we'd have things scheduled and be like, and then they would be like, well, you were busy all these days, so I'm gonna do this on a day we had planned separate. And they tried to make me feel guilty about the fact that I was doing something to better myself, even though I was still putting in the time to like plan out certain dates and things of that nature. And then it was kind of a slap in the face because in the beginning they were like, yeah, okay, I get that, I'm not going to see you all the time, but don't go into a relationship like saying you're going to accept those terms if you don't truly believe that you can accept them. I mean, that's one of the hardest things. And then you try and make your partner feel guilty when they try and make it up to you. Like, that's not right either. So I think that's also part of what caused a lot of the fallout in my last relationship. It's a twofold. I was putting more in than they were, and it's just, you know, doomed from the start when that starts to happen. And then I was more okay with the fact that I became okay with not hearing from them for several days, which that shouldn't be how you feel in a relationship. You shouldn't be okay with not hearing from someone. Even if it's just a message saying, hey, I'm busy, I'll call you later. Like things like that.
And from all of our relationships, what qualities, now that we've grown, would you say is a must for your significant other to have for it to be everlasting and worth being together for? Through the fights, because the way I see it, relationships, people think it's sunshine and rainbows what you see on the internet. It is not. You are going to have a lot of fights over simple shit. It's the simple shit. Can you deal with the little back and forth over simple shit where you're like, all right, I can still see myself with this person forever? What would you say qualities they need to have? It's non-negotiable that they need to have going into a relationship with you where you can be like, you know what? I'll actually go above and beyond for you.
I mean, for me, I've kind of said it. I'm a first responder, so it's the fact that I'm not going to be home for most days. It's like I'll have 3 days on and then off for the next 4. So it's learning to be flexible with my schedule and understanding of the fact that I can't necessarily drop what I'm doing at the second you ask, but I can make up for that time at a different time. So it's being flexible with the schedule and things like that and wanting to grow together. I think that's a big thing is like having similar interests. Yes, that's a good thing, but also having different interests that you can experience together, like get someone interested into something you really like and vice versa, try something they're really into, and then just finding new things that you're both into. So just being adventurous and trying out new things, new restaurants, different activities, traveling together, things like that. So I think being willing to really get to know a person and grow together, I think that's a big thing for me.
I think for me, honesty and open communication, right? Like being transparent with your intentions, right? And also being transparent that our intentions change over time. I come from a family of divorce, and, my dad left work suddenly when I was 2. And so, like, for me, I always lived my life thinking, like, have I done everything I can do? Like, with any decision I make, whether it be, dating someone, switching jobs, transferring colleges, like, everything that I do in my life, the question I always ask myself is, did I do everything I could do to make sure that this was successful, right? That did I do everything I could do to, save this relationship, or did I do everything I could do at this job before I now want to move into another? And I think the most traumatizing part of my last relationship ending was I never really got the opportunity to ask that question because, I didn't even know he wasn't happy, I think that for me, it's one thing to communicate, right? It's one thing to say, to your partner, please promise me you'll talk about anything that comes up, right? But it's another thing to actually do it. And for me, we had talked about communicating, but when push came to shove, we didn't ever really communicate. And that's why I think it took so long to sort of process all of that, because I didn't even know it was coming when it came. And I think, that also makes it hard to kind of forgive people, because whether they want to be back in your life or not. So I think, like, honesty, right, communication, right, being transparent. You don't know how many people I've gone out with that, actually pretty much all of my boyfriends or people I've gone out with, the boilerplate language, other than it's not you, it's me, is I'm just not ready for something long term, right? But in 9 times out of 10 of those cases, I never asked for anything long term, right? Like, I never said, I want to marry you. I said, this is going somewhere, right? Those are two different conversations. And so, being honest with what you're looking for, but also checking in with each other, right? You could date someone for a few years and think that you're on the same page and discover you're not. So I think just being open with one another and being transparent, not only about your intentions in the moment, but also as time goes on. And I think more than just that, I definitely see value in someone who's, wants to be a part of my life, but also wants me to be a part of theirs. Like, this mutual, I'm inviting you into my life and you're inviting me into yours, right? We're not losing our own sense of self. I think for me, I often go into relationships and sort of leave my life on hold. And I don't do that anymore, because when something fails, you go back into, a life that's in complete disarray, and they still have their life. So I think looking at it like we're sharing our lives with each other. We're not becoming each other's lives. And with that comes, like, a mutual interest in what we do for a living and our interests. And, like, my ex wanted to be a doctor, and I could never understand any of the tests he would take or the books he would read, but, like, I was fascinated because he was smart, right? And I won't understand some of the things that he studied, but the fact that someone could be so passionate about emergency medicine or, neurology or psychology, to me, is fascinating. And he also took an interest in a lot of things I did and the professional accomplishments I went through. I think it's like a give and take in all aspects.
Isn't life just fun? Figuring out who you are, and it's an everlasting process forever. You never know fully who you are because you keep learning something new every day about yourself. That's why we keep growing, and you got to be open for room of improvement. Life is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And you got to adjust to your lifestyle, because you may up and change who you want to be, what you want to be, or where you want to be the next morning. You may work to be one thing, and then boom, it's like, you know what? This is not where my heart is. I want to do this, and I see things going this way. And you got to have somebody in your corner ready to help you out in any way they need. They may give you some advice, as they should, and you should heed their advice. Always be open to what they say. But at the end of the day, they have their life and you have yours, and it's up to you to either take it, listen to it, and understand what may happen if you choose this path, or ignore it, do what you want to do, and now they're sitting over here saying, "Oh, they never listen to me or take my warnings or advice because they don't care. It's their life." And you need to find that balance of figuring out, okay, they had a point with this and that, and you just got to find that nice balance and flow in the relationship. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. But I'll tell you one thing. These two people here got something special. And this is for all the lovers tonight who may be in the queer community. You know, Joe is a single bachelor out there looking for a nice stud muffin, you know. Nothing with too many blueberries, but with all the nuts, you dig what I'm saying? So you know you already got your work cut out for you. He's around between 5'10" and 6'1", white Jewish male. He's got all the personality and all the sassiness you may need. We got Erica over in the other corner. She's between 5'5" and 5'7". She is a 3-sport athlete. She also teaches field hockey. She is wanting to be a paramedic, and she is achieving that so far. Just wait until next year. She got big plans. She enjoys adventuring, traveling, hiking, biking, sporting, and fun play and foreplay. You see what I did there? Hello. All right. So if you are in the neighborhood or want to get in contact with these gents or women, I will have their information of what they will let me put on here, and you can decide for yourself, are you up to the task of being there as a support, as an anchor, as a strong-willed individual, but open-minded at the same time to help build this relationship up and help to build each other to where you want to be, so you can set the foundation for your kids and they can build the rest of the house. Any closing words you guys have? Or did you like my summary?
I like your ending. I think it's great. I also would just like to say that I make a really mean grilled cheese for anyone that wants to know.
Yeah, no, that was a good ending.
You see? Yep. Great people. Y'all learned something today. We don't teach around here. Y'all learned something today. We finna learn you something, and I hope you take it with a grain of salt or take it with a weight on your shoulders. But either way, if I don't learn y'all nothing and they ain't learn you nothing this whole time, and you don't take away anything, you guys take away this, as you always do. This has been Lilsnoopy on the track. I had to talk. I had to say what was on my mind. And always remember, love, peace, and hair grease. I'll see y'all.
What I gotta do to feel the same. I'm gonna play the game. I'm going out, I'm getting loose. I'll tie the knot on this balloon. The odds are saying that you lose. I'm under him and over you. I'm under him and over you. My contacts dried out. Woke up in a new house. Don't tell my mama, she wouldn't be too proud. It took a crazy night to get you off my mind. You call them bad decisions, I call them a good time. Thoughts been rattling around in my brain. Thinking about somebody new is insane. I'm a little dirty, but I like it this way. I'm walking with no shame.